Hey everybody. It's that time, the dreaded assignment, but actually it's the time that you get to show off how much you've learned over the past 3 weeks, and you're going to be amazed by what you're going to be able to achieve. So let's get straight into it and have a look and see what exactly you're being asked to do. I'm not going to cover everything because when you read it, you'll have different questions. I have some of them here that I'm going to go through, but you will have different questions on it because I'll read it, I'll see some stuff, you'll read it, you'll see other stuff. When you get together, you'll think of other things that we didn't think of. So it's a working document in that you'll see over time we may add more constraints, we may add more information, we may improve the rubric. So this is where you're going to come to have a look at the assignment and see, make sure that you're on the right path. But the overall aim of what we ask you to do isn't going to change. So let's have a look at your assignment. So in your assignment, you're given this, and I'm sure some of you have looked at it, and I know you have because I've seen some of the Slack messages. But basically, we just want you to create a piece of art. And we want you to create a piece of art using what you have done already. So we don't want you to go off and to research lots of different areas that we haven't looked at. That's not what this is about. This is about taking what you've learned and being able to produce something brilliant. So it's your first assignment, and it's going to, we have a look at it, it's 25% of your overall grade. So it's not to be sneezed at. And but we want to make sure that when you're doing it, you follow the rules. And this assignment is all about rules, in that you don't do anything that you're not asked to do, and you make sure you do everything you are asked to do, because if you do everything you're asked to do, you're going to get a good mark. So let's have a look and see how that takes place. So on the assignment, it says, it gives you, tells you that you're producing a piece of art. It shows that you can go to different places to get a little bit of inspiration. So you can have a look at Pinterest and see, is there anything there that for an interest point of view. It talks to you about what grids are. So we tell you that we want you to have a grid. So that means that we may want to have the same piece, the same thing to be reproduced a number of times. But if you go and have a look here at the different grids, you can see what it means to be a regular grid. So in this case, I don't want to put my mouse over because it goes, but you can see that it's quite clearly in the first blue one there, that it's quite clearly broken down into an actual grid, and they're all equal size. Or you can see in this one, it's irregular. It's still a grid, but there are different sizes in each grid. So that would be an irregular grid. But you can have a look through, have a look at these, get some ideas as to what you want to do. And then I'll go through in a second how I would start, but we'll get to that in a second. So it says, watch the video, which you're doing now, read the information that's given, and stay up to date with information posted on Slack, especially in the Programming Assignments channel. So if you haven't already joined, make sure you join the Programming Assignments channel. There'll be great information because your classmates will be asking questions and we'll be answering them whenever we get a chance. Most of you can do it, just using the labs, going back and having a look at what we did. But don't be afraid to reach out and use your tribe or use your community. Look for advice, specifications. In all of this information is what we're going to be giving you. But if you're not sure of anything, again, as I said, you can ask on Slack, ask individually, ask, in our hangback session next week, the week after next, or in the labs when the labs come back. Okay, so we have a look at the advice. So the advice before you start is to read the specification. So that means do not, be ready to type. Do not be ready, have processing open. Just read the specification. Make sure you've got all your labs completed, because if you will have all your labs completed, then what you're reading makes sense. So what you're going to be asked to do is getting sense. Get going early. So it's unlikely that you can sit down and just do it all in one go. So starting it, designing it, and I'll have a chat a little bit about designing it in a second, but designing it and figuring out what it is you want to do, and then to get going and do it. So that'll take time, and it's really good if you can get started on that early. Keep backups. So make sure you've got different versions. If you want, you can have a look at seeing how you would add it to Git and to GitHub. But that's completely up to yourself. But if you want to just have different versions, so that you can go back in time. If you need to finish coding at any time because you're not, you're almost finished, you haven't done everything you want, you should, but you need to know that you're going to be asked to write a reflection, and you're going to need to know the line numbers. So it's best to have that completed. So have your coding completed before you start on your reflection. Okay. And before you submit, make sure you read the marking scheme and the rubric. We'll go through that in a second. It's really important that you don't include something that you're not supposed to, because we don't want you going off on a tangent. We want you to do what we're being asked to do, and to do it as well as you possibly can. Again, check Slack. Look at your indentation, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Make sure you have comments, and just make sure that you have the 4 files that you're being asked. Okay, zip them up, and then you're going to put them into Moodle. But don't worry, when we get to this point here, we'll be here to give you more help and advice. So the specification. So in this specification, you're asked to draw a piece of art, and it changes every time it's run and or change while it's running. So that was a question, what does that mean? So that means that you're going to have a setup and a draw, so there's going to be animation involved. You can make the drawing change dependent on a mouse event. You can a key press. It could just change automatically every 10 seconds or whatever way you want to do. The colours could be in different places. The shapes could be slightly different areas. So we want it so that it's not a static drawing. So it's not, the aim isn't just to produce those images that we'll see in a second. It's to produce those images, but they can change. Okay, and that's when it comes into the creative side and making a change depending on events that occur. So again, a max of 3 shapes can be used, a max of 5 colours from the palette, and we expect that you don't have to write any more than 300 lines of code. Okay, and you don't have to even write 300 lines of code. You have to write the number of lines of code that make sure that you meet all of the rubric. So you do everything that's in that and you do it well. Okay, so we'll have a look at the Adobe color. So that was a question about, is it only 5 colors? Yes, it is only 5 colors. Does black and white count? You can use white for maybe the writing, but they would count if you're going to use them. So let's have a look at our Adobe color. So when you go in here, you can make an account, and I've made an account, and I can store stuff. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. So you can go in here and you can have a look at the different palettes, and you can see they're all 5 colours that work well together. So let's say, for example, I like this one, and I can say I want to add that to the library. So when I go and have a look at my libraries, these are the colours. These are the schemes which I've saved. So if I want, this was the one I was looking at there. So if I click on that one, I can go in and see these here are the values for each of those. So if I copy them, I'll be able to copy them back into my code, and I'll come back to that in a second. But we also, if we go down here, we can see the red, green and blue values as well, if that's what we want to use in our code. And then this is the name of this. So that's what we'll be putting into our README. So you can go in, you can have a look. There's loads of different colours there. You can play with them as you want, but yeah, keep them to whatever you've picked from here, whatever theme you've picked from there. The display size is going to be 1280 by 720, so you're going to set up in the size. The grids should subdivide this down 16 cells wide by 9 cells high. And again, you've had a look and seen what the difference between regular and irregular. So you can figure that one out yourself. The contents of each cell should use shapes and colours. How they are drawn is completely up to yourself. So each cell could have different layout of the shapes, the different size of the shapes could be slightly different size. You could use the colours slightly differently. When you press the key, the colours could change, all of those kind of things, okay? And so this is where you're going to set up your cells. The text should incorporate white text, so this is where the white is coming in. And on the first row, you display your full name and your student number. So this white here isn't included in your 5, but this is the only place it can be used. Then you're going to save your image, and there are constraints on what you can and can't use, and we'll get to that in the next slide. And here's your aims. You can look at those yourself, but we're making sure these are all of the things that we have done over the last 3 weeks. So we started off with the animation, the set up and draw. We looked at the size for the windows. We looked at selection. We looked at iteration. So we looked at how to go down through different paths. We looked at how to repeat. We looked at our bespoke methods, that it's writing our own methods. And then we looked at processings and the mouse. So we've looked at this, and this is what we want you to see, want you to reuse, okay? And very important to consult the rubric to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So the constraints, again, I'm going to let you just read those. But basically what's ruled in for this is what we've looked at, okay? What's ruled out is what we haven't looked at, okay? So no classes, so no other tabs except for what you're asked for. Don't change the frame rate. There's no need to change it. We don't want anything 3D. You don't need to use arrays. It's not a game that we want you to create. You don't need to score anything, so you don't need to have like a ball going across that's hitting a bat, and if it hits it, it gets a score. We don't need any of those. So these are all the different things that we don't need, and we don't want you, so, and then down here, no loop, we want it to loop, okay? So again, keep an eye here. As someone asks a question that we haven't thought of, you'll find here that we'll either put it in or take it out, okay? But basically anything that we've done so far is in. Anything that we haven't done that's more advanced is out, okay? So look at this is really important. So this is your rubric. Now we will maybe break it down again the week after next, but this is for our basic is what we want you to do. So you're going to make sure that in your code you have comments, it's correctly indented, you have a readme and you have a reflection. And if you have all of those, that's automatically 5 marks. If you have the sizing and the positioning done correctly, that's 5 marks. If you have a working animation and draw and setup, that's 5. So you go down, you make sure you go, yeah, have that, have that, have that. Have I got if statements? Have I got loops? Did I write my own methods? Have I used processing methods? So there was a question about, can you use random with the colours? You can't create a random colour using random, but you could have the 5 colours, and maybe you could randomly return a number between 1 and 5. And if it's 1, it's the first colour. If it's 2, it's the second colour. So you can use random as a function. You just can't use it to randomly produce another colour. Okay. Mouse press. So have I got mouse press? Have I got events with the mouse? If I have, it's a 10. Use the string. Have I created the file? And, you know, a final product, how good is it? Is it original? You know, is it creative? That's kind of a subjective one. And you remember, you're going to be marking this. We'll check it, but you're going to be marking this. So we'll have a look and see. So if you have all of those done well, well, then you're going to get a fair mark. Okay. if you're missing any of these, then your marks are going to be less whatever is over here. Okay, so again, very important that you follow the rubric and you do everything that's been asked. And extremely important that you don't do anything that you're not asked, because that could mean that you don't get it, that you fail. Okay, so don't put in anything that's on that's on the constraints. Okay, again, we'll maybe put out a more detailed one after next week. Okay, this is a mark out of 10. You know how complex and how good your code is. Did you use nested loops? Did you use nested if statements? Are you calling bespoke methods? So there's quite a little bit here on this. And then the final mark is calculated by everything that you've done is added up, and then it's multiplied by the complexity. Okay, so in this case here, we're saying it's 9 out of 10 for complexity. So we multiply your mark by 9 and then divide it by 10 to get the percentage. Okay. So we may interview you if we think that we need to, but again, we won't go through that yet. All right. So you can see different examples there. So this is something that people were asking about, what goes in the README. So you can see here the README file is going to have your name, your number, and then a brief description, a link to the colour palette, and then what the colours are, how you use it, and if there's any bugs in it. Your reflection tab is what we mark. So this is so important that you get this right. It's so important that you do this when you have your code written, because you're going to be using numbers. Again, you can have a look and read through it, and I'll show you one in a second, and then you're going to create the file. So I'm just going to pull across this here. So again, all this is the code that we did last week. It's just the chess, and you can see here I am using colors. So I actually took these colors from a theme on Adobe. So you're going to set them up so you'll have your 5 colors, whatever way you want to do them yourself. This is just one way. If I was to run this, it's showing our chess from last week with just colors. So in my README, I would have the brief description, it'll randomly draws the colors, whatever it doesn't, but that's okay. Whatever it makes sense to yours, where the palette is, what are the different colors I'm using. And these are the instructions if there's any mouse events or key events, how to use this. So how does it change? And they'll go in here. Okay, so that's your README. Your README will be the same format as what's on it, except it'll just goes into a little bit detail about how to use your project. And then the reflection this is the important part. So it'll be a reflection, your name, your student number, and then as per the rubric. So you're going to have a look at the rubric, and let's go back here to the rubric for a second. So you're going to have a look at the rubric. So here, part A, comments, indentation, and you can see that's out of 5 marks. So I have part A, comments, names, the meaningful method names, the lines that they're on, what line numbers that we have, what line number we have the comments, and then this is the mark I think I should get for it. So I think I should get 5 because I had them all done. So part B is the display, and if this was in it, I'd said on line 17 I have the display window, and that's where the code is for that, and on line 18 the code window is positioned correctly. Okay, so I would go down through my rubric and make sure that I have all of these, and this is the marks and how much marks I would give myself out for those, and then at the end add them all up. So again, you give yourself the mark you think. You don't be mean to yourself, because that's our job. So you give the mark that you think you deserve. Okay, so that's our README, our reflection. Let me have a look and see what notes. So yeah, is it possible to go over the reflection? Okay, that's the reflection. The question about don't put it's okay to put the mets in a separate tab. No, keep the code together. We had a look. We said it's 5 colours. The white is for the text. So that's a different colour, but it's for the text. Are we allowed to use random on colour values? Not on the colour values, but you could randomly choose one of your 5 colours. Okay, so I think we have that's it. So when we get to start, how would I start? Oh, I forgot to put down a whiteboard. How would I start? So what I would do is, I'm just going to draw this for a second. I would get out a piece of paper and I would come up with my idea. So let's say, for example, my idea is trees. Okay, so I want to do something that involves trees. Okay, so maybe I have this idea that I'm going to draw multiple trees, or I'm going to draw some sort of, some sort of a garden or something, so that each of the cells has a different thing in it. So I might want to draw a tree. So my tree might be made up of a rectangle and then loads of balls to make it. So then what I do is I'd say, okay, that's okay. And I'd see, could I write the code to draw one of them? And then I would put that into a method and draw that. I might want to draw a flower. So what do I need for a flower? So I have a look and see how I'm going to draw a flower. Now this may look like a mess to you, but all I'm doing at this moment in time is coming up with ideas. I'm trying to think what exactly I'm going to do. People might want different shapes. So when I have it come up with my idea and what I'm going to do, then I'll identify, well, I'm going to need to have an ellipse. I'm going to need to have a rectangle. So I still have another shape. So what maybe I'm going to have a triangle, and I might change my tree to have a triangle or something. So I come up with the shapes that I'm going to use, so I know that they're my shapes I'm going to use. Then I have to think about the colours, and I decide what colours or for what theme I'm going to use. And when I have it kind of started in my head, then I go to code and I start coding, and I have a look and I get it to work in maybe some sort of a simple grid. And then I get it to work that when I press it, it presses and it changes colour or it does something else. Everything is randomly pushed around. So there's lots of different things that I can do and different ways that I can look at this. But I first of all want to come up with the idea of what it is I want to do. I want to come up with the shapes that I want to use. I want to come up with the colours that I want to use. And then I'm going to start, and as I said, I might start by making the grid. I might start by putting the same thing in every grid. I may start then by putting different things in different grids, every second grid or whatever, every second cell, whatever it is I want to do. But I'm continually improving and then continually changing it until I get to the point where I'm really happy with what I've done. Okay, and then I'm going to do my reflection. So someone asked, could they see one that was, that got a good mark? No, I suppose there's quite a lot of examples. Just seeing the image actually doesn't tell you whether they got a good mark or not, because what you're seeing is a static representation of what was drawn. You're not seeing what happened when the mouse event occurred, what happened when a key was pressed. So there's other parts to this that you're not seeing by just the static representation. But, everything that we've shown you, got good marks. It's not like we showed you stuff that failed. So, we have given you a good idea of where you could start, but there's a lot more to it than, I suppose, just that. So if you have any more questions, just let us know, and we'll answer them on Slack. If I didn't cover something, just let me know, or I wasn't clear. Just give us a shout. All right. Best of luck, and remember, it's on what you've done already, not on the code that's out there or all the amazing things that's out there. It's what we've done, and look at the lovely images that were produced in last year's, and that's just the same. It was based on work that they had done in class. You're doing great. Best of luck, and we'll talk soon.